Good morning, everyone. I am Erin Turbot, the Communications Lead with the Department of Workforce Services, and I'm thrilled to welcome you today to today's virtual training series, Maximize Workforce Growth, Unlocking the Power of WDTF Grants. Now, WDTF stands for Workforce Development Training Funds. I know you guys are going to be super excited to hear about all of that. I want to give you a little bit of background first. We created this series based on your feedback, honestly, and we're excited to bring you topics that matter most to you. Be sure to check out our website at dws.wyo.gov/VTS. We're going to drop that link in the chat right now for any upcoming sessions, registration, and recordings of past events. Today's session is being recorded, and all materials, including handouts and the slides, will be available on our site within the next few days. If you have any questions during the presentation, just pop them into the chat or in that Q&A function. Either works just fine, and our presenter, Savannah, will answer them at the end of the hour. Now let's go ahead and dive in. Please welcome today's speaker, Savannah Baskus, who is Department of Workforce Services Workforce Development Training Fund Lead. Savannah, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Savannah Baskus. I am the Workforce Development Training Fund Program Lead here within the Business Training and Support Unit. The Business Training and Support Unit is our overarching unit that we are under. Within the Workforce Development Training Fund, we have 5 grants that are available to Wyoming-based businesses to apply for. We're kind of just going to go through all 5 of them, the general processes, the purpose, and the application process for all 5 of those grants today, and then answer any questions that you guys might have. So our first grant is going to be our business training grant. So the purpose of this grant is for businesses to send their current employees to training that will either correct a skill deficiency or upgrade their current skill level in their current occupation. All of our grants function on a reimbursement model. This grant is a reimbursement grant that is eligible for training expenses that are approved. So any related training expenses that can be registration, travel, flights, rental car, mileage, anything along the lines that is required for the training can be reimbursed at the end of the training period. General eligibility for our business training grant is any Wyoming-based business or nonprofit here in Wyoming. And then the business does need to be physically located in Wyoming and have employees that are working here in Wyoming as well. Governmental and quasi-governmental entities are not eligible for funding under this grant unless they are Wyoming County or Memorial Hospitals or EMS providers within the state. In order to apply for this grant, the business does need to be registered and in good standing with the Wyoming Unemployment Insurance, Wyoming Workers' Compensation, Wyoming Secretary of State, and then also within our unit, they need to be in good standing with WDTF. And then you also need to be registered within Higher WYO and have an active account within that system in order to be eligible to apply for grants. We do recommend that you ensure that you are in good standing and registered with all these entities prior to applying. If you're not registered with them, it can take at least 10 days to 2 weeks to get all of those registrations completed to make sure that you are in good standing for the application to be submitted. Under the business training grant, the funding caps that we have in place is a business is eligible as a whole for up to $75,000 per fiscal year to be applied towards trainings that are needed within their entity. And then preferred industries are capped at $3,000 per trainee per fiscal year, and non-preferred are capped at $2,000 per trainee per fiscal year. Those preferred industries are going to be manufacturing, construction, finance and insurance, hospitality and tourism, healthcare and social assistance, and IT, so information and technology. The application for our business training grant is all within our current grant management system that we have active for the business training grant. Applications are accepted the first 7 days of each month for consideration. And then once we have reviewed those applications at the close of the window, all of our applications are taken to a review panel for consideration. The entities do need to be registered within our grant management system prior to being able to submit an application. That registration process is inputting your general business information within the system, and then our team goes through and ensures that you are in good standing with those entities that were mentioned before to make sure that you are in compliance, and then your registration is approved. And then from that approval, you're able to go into your system, in your account, and submit the applications for that month. Again, that's the first 7 days of each month. And then it will close, and applications submitted before the 1st and after the 7th will not be considered within that month. We do check for all required paperwork to be submitted, as well as detailed and complete applications. So just ensuring that a complete application with all those components are submitted will kind of help progress your application to the next phases for funding. Within the business training grant, there is kind of a timeline where the applications need to be submitted. So an application cannot be submitted no earlier than 30 days from the start date of the training and no later than 110 days before the start date of the training. So if you're looking to apply in the January window for training, and you say you're wanting to submit your application on January 1st, the training start date cannot be earlier than January 31st in order to be eligible. Our next grant is going to be our internship grant, which is probably one of our most popular grants. The purpose of this grant is for Wyoming-based businesses to host and provide a short-term learning opportunity to an individual or individuals to provide more hands-on experience and a short-term learning opportunity for them to gain knowledge within a different industry or different occupation that they might be interested in going into. Again, this grant is also in a reimbursement model, and this grant reimburses for the wages for your intern that you are hosting within your entity. The eligibility components for the internship grant is similar to our business training grant. So the business does need to be a Wyoming-based business or nonprofit, and then those governmental or quasi-governmental entities are not eligible for this funding unless they are that Wyoming County or Memorial Hospital or an emergency medical service provider. And then again, similar to a business training grant, the business does need to be registered with Workers' Comp, UI, Secretary of State, and then in good standing with our program as a whole. For the internship grant, the business does not need to be registered for HireWyo. This slide kind of goes over the current parameters surrounding our internship grant that we are currently functioning off of. So an internship can be up to 480 hours, which is about 3 months full-time work, 6 months part-time work for an individual. We can reimburse up to 18 per hour for the individual, and that is dependent on the wage documentation that is provided within the application. So part of the application process is submitting the average hourly wage for the role that the intern will hold. Because it is an internship opportunity, we expect the wage for the intern to be on the low to average side of that hourly scale because it is that short-term learning opportunity. A business is eligible for up to 3 internships per fiscal year. And then registered apprenticeship programs are eligible for up to 5 internships per fiscal year. And then a mentor does need to be identified for the intern within your business. We do review the applications to ensure that the mentor that is identified does have some level of expertise or knowledge within the area that they will be mentoring the intern in. And then an intern cannot be hired no earlier than 1 month prior to when your application is submitted. So again, if you're looking to submit an application on January 1st for an internship, the intern cannot be hired no earlier than December 1st. And then if you are approved, the intern does need to be hired 2 months after your contract has been executed. So that gives you a couple months to kind of find the individual if you didn't have one identified when you submitted your application. You do not have to have an intern already identified or hired in order to submit your internship grant application. If you do have one, we'll ask for further information within your application, who the individual is, and then ask for that hire date and then their pay stubs or employment verification to ensure the date that they were hired. But you can submit an application for an internship opportunity without having that intern identified, and then you have that 2 months to find the right individual for your business. Our application process for the internship grant is, again, open the first 7 days of each month for applications to be submitted. And then right now it is a Google form application. We are in the process of standing up our new grant management system, which we'll talk about a little later. So as of right now, it is a Google form. It is a relatively straightforward application. We do just ask details within what the internship will look like, how this will affect the intern, your business, and then a structured learning experience needs to be identified within the application. So what kind of tasks the intern will hold, what will the meeting process be like. We do require at least 3 meetings with your intern, so that initial, midterm, and final exit interview for your intern, but we do recommend meeting, of course, with your intern more frequently. We've seen that increases the success of it. All of the information on how to or what questions will be on the application are on our website. So we do have the instructions and sample questions provided on our website, which is a great place to start. It gives you an outline of where to start for the application, and then it gives you some insight onto what to expect within your application when you're going through. We do have additional funding for internship grants that is WIP funded, so through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership. This funding is specifically to young adults that are students. So if your internship opportunity, if you're looking to bring on a young adult between the ages of 16 and 24 that is a current student, either high school, college, trade school, whatever level, as long as they're an active student. If you have an intern identified that is within those parameters, or you think you might be hiring within those categories, this is just additional funding where we can allocate that funding towards your application. The application process is the same as our WDTF funded internship program. And then we just filter through once we're reviewing applications and what funding source would be most applicable. Our next grant is going to be our Pre-Hire Economic Development Training Grant. This grant is to develop an industry-specific workforce for businesses where there's a shortage within that industry or within that skill. A great example for this type of grant or this funding is CDL training. So there is a training, the application is a combination of 4 entities that are completing the application. So there's a training provider, the local economic development entity, the local workforce center, and then a business or businesses that are experiencing a shortage within that skilled workforce. So again, going back to that CDL training, there is a training provider identified. So whether it's a in-house CDL training or it could be LCCC, and then there's a local economic development entity that is partnering within the application, and then you're also partnering with your workforce center to show that there's a need within that that skill or that industry. And then you're partnering with businesses across the area that might be needing that level of skilled workers. So for that CDL scenario, you're partnering with businesses within the area that have expressed a need for CDL licensed workers within their company. One component with this is that those companies that are partnering with you on the application, they are agreeing to interview the trainees that have completed the program at the end to potentially hire. There are a more wide range of entities that are available to apply for the pre-hire training grant. So that can be private training entities, community colleges, the University of Wyoming, trade unions, different industry associations. So there really is no limit on who can apply for a pre-hire grant. But it's just making sure that you can show that there's a need within the workforce within that skill set that you're looking to train into. There is not necessarily funding caps associated with the pre-hire grant. However, the amount that you're requesting per trainee does need to align with kind of the average within the area for that cost. So again, going back to the CDL training, so per trainee, we expect the amount that's being requested for the tuition, registration, class fees, or any of the fees for licensing and certification to align with the average cost of training for that skill set within the state. This grant does reimburse for any training related expenses. So that is, again, that tuition, registration, it could be class materials, and it can also reimburse for instructor wages as well. Applications for the pre-hire grant are accepted the first 7 days of each month. that is kind of just across the board for all of our grants. And then within the application, we do ask for the individual applying or the training entity providing to express or to demonstrate that shortage of skilled workforce, and then outline the training program and what that will look like. And then outlining the cost per trainee and a breakdown of how those costs will be applied. Our next grant is going to be our pre-obligation grant. This is a larger scale grant that we do recommend entities that are looking to potentially apply for this. We would like to meet first just to kind of make sure that this is the correct kind of avenue for whatever your needs are. This is essentially our WDTF setting aside an obligated amount of funds to a business or businesses to be applied towards the pre-hire grant or the business training grant to expand their business or to bring in a business to Wyoming. So it is the economic development entity that is requesting that obligation of funds on behalf of that business or businesses to incentivize them to come here or to expand a business that is currently here. And then again, that is just kind of spread out through the business training grant or the pre-hire grant to be utilized. Our last grant is going to be our apprenticeship training grant. So this grant is specifically towards registered apprenticeship programs or the RTI providers to apply for. Either entities can apply, the registered apprenticeship program or the RTI providers. So that is going to be the related instruction providers or the registered apprenticeship program sponsors. They do need to be registered within the Department of Labor in order to apply for this funding. And then they do need to ensure that both the sponsors, so those employers that are registered apprenticeship programs, or the provider of the training is registered with those 4 entities, similar to our other grants, in order to receive funding. A great example for this is going to be HVAC is a great example here in Cheyenne at LCCC. So LCCC is the RTI provider, so they are providing that in the classroom training to the apprentices. And then their sponsors that they are partnering with, their registered apprenticeship programs across Cheyenne, are partnering within the application to provide the apprentices to LCCC to get that classroom training, while the registered apprenticeship program is providing that on-the-job training. So they're meeting both components of that registered apprenticeship program. The application is again open the first 7 days of each month, and then the application is in a Google form currently where you will answer specific questions, just outlining the training program, how that will look, and then there are quite a few attachments that do need to be uploaded within this application. So that will be all the components that are required for registered apprenticeship programs. So those Davis-Bacons, the attachment A, which outlines the registered apprenticeship program, and then different components, which we'd be happy to walk through any sponsors or RTI providers through the process if they're interested in pursuing this grant. And then we do ask within the application that it is kind of prepared jointly with the RTI provider if they're not the registered apprenticeship program that's applying, as well as the Office of Apprenticeship here in Cheyenne as well. So they are aware of the application that's coming through. Just a couple of things that are coming up for our program. So we are in the process of standing up that new grant management system. We are looking at January for our business training grant and our internship grant to potentially go live. So that will be a new process. We will be setting up multiple Q&As over the next month to 2 months, and probably continuing to train businesses and different entities on how to utilize the new grant management system. It is a different change from the processes we've used currently. So we just want to make sure that we're setting up those Q&As. So those will all be on our website once we have those scheduled to kind of do that initial training within the new grant management system. All business information that is currently in our old systems will transfer over into that new system. So that will already be kind of inputted within the system. Our website is a great resource for all of our grants. That will have an overview of all the documentation that is required for the grants, as well as the instructions and sample questions for all of the different opportunities. And it will also have all of our information if you're needing assistance at any point with your applications. Our unit is here to kind of assist in any capacity that we can. We do have a Wyoming-specific apprenticeship website that was developed within our unit. So that is whyapprenticeships.com, and that is where you can access all the registered apprenticeship programs that are existing within the state of Wyoming. And then if you're an apprentice or potential apprentice that's looking for a new opportunity, that's a great resource on where to start. Or if you are a business that is looking to become a registered apprenticeship program, that is a great central starting point to outline the processes and the next steps for you. Our website again has those live Q&A sessions on when we will be doing training sessions, and then we do host one monthly Q&A session over these 5 grants each month. So that is usually posted on our website at the beginning of each month. And then again, that detailed grant information, it has frequently asked questions, and then all of our general program updates will be up there as well. And then our application window is open those first 7 days of each month. This is just a general contact sheet for our unit. So Shay Moon is our BTSU program manager, and then has my information, and Ivy Karajian is our apprenticeship program lead. So she's a great resource if you have questions on becoming a registered apprenticeship program or any other funding available to registered apprenticeship programs across the state. I think that is all for me. I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Okay, thank you, Savannah. We're going to start with some questions. And I know we've had a few questions come in the chat that were just like easy questions that I could answer. So I'm going to go ahead and reiterate. We are going to be sending out the recording in the next couple of days, and that will include slides and handouts as well. So you'll have access to all of this. If you registered, if you're here right now, you're going to have access to it. And then let's move on to our first question here is, are tribal healthcare organizations considered to be quasi-governmental, or would they be able to apply for the BTG grants?
I believe they would be eligible to apply. We can always set up a time to meet with you to discuss a little further. It kind of depends on funding, but typically the healthcare, the hospitals and service providers within the healthcare industry are eligible to apply. But I can double check on that for you.
Next question, would you please go over the fiscal year? For instance, if a company has an intern for the summer, June through August, is the company able to have interns the next year starting in June?
Yep, so our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. So you have 3 interns per fiscal year, and those do count if the interns cross over fiscal years. So if you had an intern that crosses, so say you had your 3 for fiscal year 25 that we're currently in, but the end date for your last intern crosses over into the next fiscal year, you can apply for whatever you have remaining for internship. So if you had 1 internship that crossed over the fiscal year, you can apply for 2 more at the start of that new fiscal year and apply for that other as soon as that last intern ended. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Next question is, are oil and gas contractor businesses eligible?
Yes, as long as you are a registered business based in Wyoming and registered and in good standing with the 4 entities, so Workers' Comp, UI, and Secretary of State, you are eligible, yes.
Another question. We have, there are very few requirements for appliance repair, and I'm wondering if a new employee would fall into the category of intern.
Potentially. They could, but they do have to meet that hiring requirement. So they cannot be hired beyond a month before when you're applying. So if they were hired this month and you're applying for next month, they could be eligible for an internship. We would just ask within the application that you're really outlining how this is an internship opportunity. Typically, the intern does need to be hired for the purpose of the internship rather than for the role of a full-time employee.
Okay. Next question is, what about 501c3 nonprofits, particularly senior centers?
They will be eligible as long as they can confirm that they are not considered governmental or quasi-governmental. Some nonprofits that we have worked with in the past do receive some form of government funding, which would make them ineligible for funding. So it kind of just depends on how your nonprofit is set up. Yep, if you don't receive that government funding, then you would be eligible for grants.
Perfect, thank you. So far, I'm not seeing any other questions. If, here we go. You may have answered this already, Savannah, but is there someone at DWS that will help work through an apprenticeship?
Yeah, so Ivy Karajian is our apprenticeship program lead here with the Department of Workforce Services. She's a great kind of starting point for any businesses that are looking to become a registered apprenticeship program. So her contact information will be in the slides as well as our handouts that we are giving out as well. But you can also visit the Y Apprenticeships website that is linked in this PowerPoint as well. And that is a great resource for businesses that are looking to start that apprenticeship program. And then we can also get you connected with the new Office of Apprenticeship Director, and that is Jason Demo. And he is the person that you'd work with directly to get your program registered to make sure it meets all those Department of Labor requirements.
Next question, how much is the funding for the young adult grant?
So the funding caps for our young adult internship grant is the same as our WDTF funded internship. So it's still capped at the 480 hours and then the 18 an hour.
Not seeing any more questions at this point. If there are any more, go ahead and throw them in there in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Savannah to, ask one of my team to add the links to Savannah's handouts into the chat for you guys.
And those handouts are also a great resource. So one of them is our BTSU overall unit one pager. So it will have all of the programs that are available within our unit for businesses and individuals to apply for, as well as the contact information for the leads over all of those opportunities. And then there's also a one pager specifically around WTF and the 5 grants. So if you need a quick reference back to the grants, that's a great resource.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Savannah. Definitely, thank you so much for this fantastic presentation. I always learn a lot, and I always learn a lot more every time I hear this information, so I really appreciate it. Before we move on, I would like to ask you to take a survey on today's presentation. Your input helps us make these sessions even better, so we'd really appreciate your thoughts. Jennifer has put that link into the chat right now, if you would do that. And Savannah, if you'd go ahead and forward to that last slide.
Yep.
Now, we have, well, first, in the next few days, we're going to email you the recording, slides, and a handout along with handouts along with this survey. We'd love it if you would take the survey either now or when that email comes through. While you're completing the survey, we're going to post one last link that will allow you to register for our first presentation of the new year. We'd like you to join us on January 7th for a dynamic session on Wyoming labor standards, where you're going to uncover key insights into wage laws, child labor regulations, and harassment prevention. This will empower employers and employees alike to create fair, respectful, and compliant workplaces. Now, this is, again, a free presentation, and it is your roadmap to workplace success. So don't miss it. And thank you so very much for joining us today. I hope that we see you in January. Thanks, guys.